various major football leagues in detail. Today, we are going to connect with interviews, and we have Mr. Ben Garner, who was the former manager of Bristol Rovers and also has been with the likes of ATK in the Indian Super League, Crystal Palace, and West Brom in various capacities. So, without wasting much time, I would like to first thank Ben for coming on the show. Thank you and welcome to the show. And I would like to begin by asking you, how are you, and what have you been doing, during this pandemic period?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the welcome. Um, to be honest, it's been a combination. Really, we're having to homeschool here in England at the moment, so it's been a combination of doing that with my daughters and also trying to use the time to improve. I've been analysing and watching a lot of games. Obviously, can't get to games at the moment, but fortunate enough to have access to them via databases and online programs. So watching as many games as possible, and as I say, combining that with homeschooling.
Definitely. And like you said, like you watch how, like if you had to put a number, how many games are you watching a day?
It depends on the day, to be honest. What I've been doing the last couple of weeks is taking one coach or one team and analysing a set of games. So anywhere between 2 to 4 games a day, I would say, depending on day and what I'm looking at. Um, I've had a real focus over this period of focusing on um, coaches that I like, how they play, and teams where I really appreciate how they play, and really going into that in detail rather than watching, you know, 20, 30 different teams and different coaches. Focus on, who are the ones I really like watching, who are the teams I think I can really learn from and will help me to improve, and having a really specific focus on them.
Definitely. And maybe I'll ask a very basic question to start begin with. And you're like, why football?
I've just love of the game. Always have, always will. From a young kid growing up, football's always been a huge part of my life. And uh, I had I wasn't fortunate enough to have a professional playing career, and suffered an injury at quite an early age, which prevented me from being able to play how I wanted to or at the level that I wanted to. So I moved into coaching at a very young age, and I absolutely love that. So, I'm just in love with the game. I'm fascinated by it. Um, I always think what you think about the most when you wake up in the morning, first thing you think about before you go to bed at night, last thing you think about, that's the thing you should be doing in your life, and that for me is football.
Definitely. And like you said, like how you were injured early on in your career, and that maybe prevented you from having a playing career as you would have liked. So like in hindsight, right now you can say, okay, that is a good thing because you moved into coaching, and probably you are developing more as a coach, and which probably if you had played, you would probably now you would be very you would be
Sorry,
way behind in terms. Sure. So you would
sorry,
be
just getting it.
no, not a problem. You would be way behind in terms of your coaching education if you had a playing career. But back then, when you were injured, most of your like mates would still be playing. How difficult was it for you to maybe jump to coaching? Because at that age, you wouldn't want to get into coaching, right? Because you would want to play, and you were injured, unfortunately. So how difficult was it for you?
I think initially it was very difficult, trying to get back, not even just get back playing, but just to get the ankle joint back to what it was. I couldn't get full movement back into the joint, and I never did. So that was a frustrating period for probably 18 months to 2 years of trying to do that and trying to get back playing. But I'd already had an interest in coaching. I'd already taken what is the level 2 coaching certificate here. After getting injured, I very quickly went on to take the UEFA B license, because I'd been frustrated as a player in terms of how we coached in this country, and there's a really big emphasis on size and strength, and not as much emphasis on technique and tactical intelligence and these areas. So I already had an interest. When I had the injury and I couldn't, play as I wanted to, then I very quickly moved into coaching. And to be honest, once I started coaching, I loved it. I loved it from day one of doing it. I felt very natural doing it. I had good response from the young players that I was working with. And once I started coaching, that was it. I didn't miss playing. I just had a real love for coaching, improving players, helping them to develop. So once I made that step, that transition, I was fine. I was fine.
So irrespective of whether you had a playing career or not, you would go into coaching somewhere down the line.
I think without doubt, I just think I went into it a lot sooner because of the injury. I think I would always have coached. I started coaching in the early 20s. I took my level two 18, 19 years old. So I was always going to go into coaching. I always had that interest in it. But that might not have been till 30, 35, whatever age you finish playing. But because of the injury, I went into it a lot earlier. So you end up picking up experience a lot sooner and getting on that coaching pathway, um, as I say, a lot more earlier than probably what I would have done.
Definitely. And you also said like how you maybe your desire to coach stems from the fact that probably you were not satisfied with the coaching that the kids were getting at their age or what you received maybe. So like has that changed with time, or do you think it is still the same major in all, like not in like maybe a few cases, but if you take like 1 in 5 or maybe even 4 in 5, is it still the same or what is it?
No, it's changed hugely. The amount of work that's gone into academies now in this country, I still think it could improve. Don't get me wrong, but there's been a huge change from when I was growing up as a kid to what it is now on the where the emphasis is in terms of coaching. You've only got to look at the type of player that we've produced, over the last, especially 5 to 10 years now. And I think that's only going to improve in the future. One thing I think we do need to be aware of is not losing that competitive edge and that winning nature that was drilled into certainly my generation and generations before me. We just need to make sure that we're still maintaining that desire to win and that competitiveness alongside the football education that young players are now being afforded. Um, I think the more we can drip feed that down into grassroots as well, uh, getting away from parents on the sidelines shouting and hollering at children and letting them play and express themselves, I think that will only bode well for the future and help us to produce even better players.
Definitely. And you like you said like how maybe in the past like the coaches were more focused on getting maybe a bigger player who would probably shine at that age but would then be found out as you grow older because maybe the other players grow physically with time. So but one thing like you have been with Crystal Palace and West Brom, and the management you have been under traditionally, at least in the media, have been portrayed as people who go for that type of players who are huge and they are more maybe like the terms being used are dinosaur football or whatever they use. They are various synonyms for the same term. So like when you were working under them, like did you like was first of all I wanted to ask you like in this topic, is it justified like what maybe the media portrayed them as?
No, I think everyone gets labelled, especially in this country. We tend to stereotype managers. We very much have flavour of the month. There's generally an agenda against someone in this country, and they need someone who's on a bad run of results to go after. You've only got to look at the Premier League this season. It was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, then it was Mikel Arteta, it was Frank Lampard, who unfortunately lost his job. Now it's Jose Mourinho, who took them on a bad run. So I just think that's the attention of the sport and especially the social media impact now. Um, Managers, I worked in the academy for 7, 8 years at Crystal Palace, and um, we had a really successful period during that time in terms of the players that we produced and made their way through to the first team. I had a certain way of working, and we had a big emphasis on possession and attacking play. And when I transitioned to first team, I worked under different managers, 4 managers at Crystal Palace, all very different, all incredible strengths and things they were very, very good at, but also areas that I felt I could enhance myself and what I could add to the team. Um, and we did that very successfully. And I think we were, you can say Tony Pulis is an example, Crystal Palace, who's labelled as a certain type of manager. But that season under Tony Pulis and then the following season under Alan Pardew, we played some fantastic football. We had some fantastic victories. We beat the likes of Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City. And away from home as well. Some of those games, and we did it with a, we had an organised team, but we had great ability, we had great pace on the counter attack, and anyone that watched those period of games will tell you that we played some really, really good football. And the same at West Bromwich Albion when I was there. Again, you get stereotyped, but we had periods in both the seasons I was there where we had really good runs of results, but we played some really good football in that time. So I think there tends to be a lot of laziness in football where people read a label or the media perception and just go with it. Uh, my opinion is watch it with your own eyes. Actually see it yourself and give an opinion on it. If you're not doing that, you're not watching a game live or properly, then you're not entitled to give an opinion on it. For me, I always watch it with my own eyes. I judge every game, every manager as I see it, and certainly don't get swayed by media opinions.
Definitely. And back then when you said like you're working with them, they were getting the results. That's why, I mean, they were being hired. And like I remember, like I'm a Liverpool fan, and I think for whichever teams you were working with, they had a favorable result against Liverpool during that phase, I remember. And it's like, yeah, you may say, okay, there's a obsolete style of play, but you are getting the result. So I mean, end of the day, that's what they want. Like, you want the result. So my next question is like, when you are at that level, does style of play matter, or result is more important?
It's context. I think it's the club. What do the club want? What's the most important thing? So if you take Crystal Palace, for example, we promoted from the Championship into the Premier League. The only important thing in that first season was staying in the league. It wasn't how we play, or there was nothing in terms of that from a remit. It was stay in the league. But it depends on the context. I think Brighton's a fantastic example at the moment where they've got a very strong philosophy now. Um, Led by Dan Ashworth, who would put that in place, and there'll be a long-term view for that football club. They've got an excellent head coach in Graham Potter, who's fantastically at Ostersund's and very well at Swansea, and now in the Premier League with Brighton, and probably not underperforming, but the team that wasn't getting the results this season that their performances deserved, and that's changed in recent weeks. But I think a lot of clubs might have panicked in that situation, but Brighton haven't. They've maintained the same approach, the same way of playing. There hasn't been any pressure on the manager there, the head coach, and they've kind of had fantastic results now. So I think it's context. The big thing for me and from my experience recently of managing at Bristol Rovers is you need the club to be aligned. You need to have a strong view and a strong strategy of what you're doing, but you have to stick to it. You can't change because of up and down results. If you decide the path you're going to go, it's very important that you stick to that and see it through if that's what you believe in.
Definitely. And you touched on Bristol Rovers, and you were with Bristol Rovers recently, and I think that was the first major, like, management job, like where you were the face of the thing. So, and you had been with a lot of clubs and in multiple capacities, even in India, like you were in ATK, and in England, as I said, Crystal Palace and other teams. So how big of a jump is from being a part of the coaching staff to being the face leading the coaching staff?
Huge. Yeah, it's a very big jump. Um, I think it was difficult in two respects for me. Firstly, from where I'd worked previously and how I worked, and it was difficult to do that initially going in at Bristol Rovers in terms of facilities, in terms of equipment, in terms of the things you would need to be able to work the way that you want to work. And my remit going into the club was to take the club that was pointing in one direction, and playing in a certain way and doing things, operate as a club in a certain way, to go in the complete opposite, and changing all aspects of the club to do that. So I knew it was going to be a big task. The second difficulty for me was you're going into that job, and within a few days of taking the job, unfortunately, I got an illness to one of my daughters. So for the first 4 or 5 weeks, I was on autopilot. It was the toughest period of my life. So I probably went back a bit too soon after that as well, in hindsight, looking back. But because I hadn't started well, I felt I owed it to the fans and the players and the team to get back to work as quickly as possible. So it's difficult for me to answer that question in terms of a normal situation. I think my pressure and the issues I had were not as much from the football side. They were from the family side, and as I say, it was without doubt the toughest period of my life. So, but there's huge differences in the job in terms of the responsibilities you take on. Again, where I majority of my experience been at the higher levels, um, it's very different in League One. If you take Premier League, for example, you'll have certain people that are responsible for certain things. You don't have those people. A lot of clubs in League One. So, for example, I'm going into the role. I'm trying to arrange food and trying to arrange a training venue. Trying to help with the kit and the kit orders that's come in and it's wrong, and trying to order equipment and all these things that are actually a distraction from what you should be doing as a manager and focusing on the team. So it was a fantastic learning curve for me, and obviously I've reflected on that. I was very, very disappointed to leave the club after the amount of work that I put in terms of, like I say, turning the whole club around from where it was. Made huge changes in terms of infrastructure and staffing, and designed a new training ground that was being built, and so many areas to help the club over the next 4, 5, 10 years. So I'm disappointed that we didn't see that process through, as we planned to. But that's football. You learn from it, and you have to move on.
Definitely, and hope you are back in action soon. And I wanted to touch on you're with ATK also. Like, how did that happen in India?
It was Steve Coppell, who was manager at ATK at the time. Um, Steve was a Crystal Palace legend, which was my local club growing up, and someone that I'd looked up to, as a young player in the centre of excellence there. And obviously I knew a great deal about Steve without really knowing him personally. And he called me up shortly after Christmas before going out, and just offered me the opportunity to go out. And at the time, I wanted the managerial role. I turned down a couple of assistant jobs here in the UK, and one or two other jobs because I wanted to have that step. But two things: the opportunity, firstly, to work with Steve, and to learn from him, and secondly, to go and experience a completely different league, a completely different culture. Was a great attraction for me. So I jumped at the opportunity to go and work with Steve and with ATK, and I have to say I loved it. It was a brilliant experience, and it was only a 5 month period, but no, I loved it. I loved it.
But when you did go to ATK, when you went there for with Steve, and like, were you surprised? Because like when you said like you are working with Premier League teams and going back maybe to League One itself, you were like, okay, I have to do a lot of stuff here. And ISL is relatively very new, and maybe in, I'm not even sure if I can make that comparison. Maybe on par with League One. Maybe, I do not know. It may be even lower. So how was it like? You have like different maybe cultural, maybe like even coaches have said there was a problem of professionalism maybe with the players, or diet, whatever. Like through the years, people have, many coaches have said multiple different stuff. Even Robbie Fowler has been complaining this year of various stuffs, like of the problems he's facing. For you personally, how was it like? Because even being an assistant, I think the players open up more to maybe assistants than maybe to the main manager. So like, were you being able to relate to the players or something?
Yeah, I have to say the players were fantastic at ATK, and especially the Indian players. I just found that their attitude was absolutely brilliant. Their desire to improve and to get better. They wanted to train as much as possible. They wanted to go through video clips. They wanted to learn and soak up, and that for me as a coach was so refreshing. And I'd say the Indian Super League, I've been asked to compare it to here, and technically, tactically, it's good. I think the big difference is the intensity and the physicality of the game compared to here in England. That's why it's really difficult to compare. I think there's two reasons for that. Probably um, the technicality of the players. There's a lot of Spanish, Portuguese, South American foreign players that come into the league. So I think the technical level is good. I think the second reason for that is the heat and humidity, even playing in the evenings. If you want to try and press and do that regularly, that's very, very difficult to do because of the heat, the humidity, the amount of sweat the players lose in a game. So I think the games tend to become a bit more structured, a bit more tactical, with a high technical emphasis because of that. But like I say, the players were, and the staff at ATK, everyone wanted to learn, everyone wanted to improve. Um, the hotel that we were in, food, everything was excellent. Transport, the way we were looked after, it was fantastic. As I say, it was very different, but I loved my time working with the players there, and especially the young Indian players. We had some 18, 19, 20 year olds in the squad. I went to watch a reserve game, and there was one or two in there that we got into training with straight away because you could see the talent that they had. But I would say they're behind English players in terms of development. So a 19-year-old Indian player is probably the equivalent in football development of 16, 17 here in terms of their knowledge and understanding. But I can see that gap being bridged very quickly because of the desire to improve and the amount of dedication they want to put into it. So I'm really interested to see how the Super League grows over the next 5 to 10 years because it really has got the potential to do so.
And personally for you, like, is they do you, like, if you get an option, do you want to come back and try a hand there, or do you for now want to just establish yourself more, maybe in other teams in England?
I'm really open, to be honest. I've worked as under 11 coach all the way through to first team manager in this country, and obviously that experience as assistant to Steve at ATK. I'd love to work in other countries, in other leagues. I'd love to work in other European leagues as well. But I'm open to the next role. The important thing for me is the club and the role. It hasn't got to be a manager role. It could be a good assistant role or coaching role, but it would have to be something where I like what the club wants to do. I like what the manager wants to do, and there's clear strategy on what's going to take place, and also somewhere where I believe I will enjoy and have an impact. So the role's not as important as the club and the people. I think a good club with good people is the most important consideration, and wherever that is, I certainly consider all of those aspects when offers do take place as they have done over the last couple of months. But nothing is quite aligned at the moment in terms of being the right fit for me and my family. But I'm very hopeful it will do soon.
Definitely. And I forget who said this. I think, if I'm not wrong, if it's, I think Sir Alex Ferguson, he said, like, you should see the chairman who's where you're going, not the club. I think he says something on this lines, or so maybe someone else said to one of his players who wanted to get into coaching. And for you, how much of that is important, like your relationship with the chairman or the board before taking a job?
I think it's the most important thing. If I'm going to manage again, I would make sure that is very, very clear. Um, and you also need the resources to be able to do it. Um, so, having that direct relationship, having the necessary power, um, and also being able to look that person in the eye and know they're going to stick to this. We are going to go through with this process, and I'm going to be able to have everything available to me to be able to achieve that. Um, to be able to manage again, that would be clear to me. There's been one or two opportunities to manage again recently. I haven't had um, that trust, that sense of they want to do things the way that I want to do it and grow a club the way I want to do it. So if that's not the case, then I'm not one that's just going to take a job for the sake of it and fight fires, and that's not me. That's not how I want to manage. So, I want to work at the highest level possible with the highest level of professionalism possible, because that's how I like to work. That's where I think I'm best. So, like I say, a good club with good people is the most important thing.
Definitely. And like you also mentioned like how like the current generation of maybe coaches are probably changing on how they are coaching maybe the youth, so maybe even the players, the main team. Do you think that is a lot due to the fact that they are going out, like you mentioned Graham Potter, he has been one who went to Ostersunds. Even I think Ian Bochnall after him was at Ostersunds. You yourself, you went to ATK, although maybe not as a main manager, but what you went as an assistant manager, that would probably help you experience, like you said, like different culture, like you said, like Portuguese, South American influence or whatever. And you also have a lot of other managers, like even Steven Gerrard. He could have gotten a job here, but he did go to Rangers, which is not a bad club. It's a good club. Do you think like going abroad is vital for coaches, because then you would like you would experience something else which you are not getting here back in England?
For me personally, yes, I think it's different for different people. Um, if you said to me now you had the opportunity to manage in the EFL again, or the opportunity to go and manage in a good league abroad, I prefer to go abroad. If it was the right fit, I just think, for me to learn more, it's a better opportunity. I also think that generally in other countries there's more structure in terms of sporting directors in place, a club philosophy, a club belief, um, and I think for English coaches, you're better off doing that and then translating that back here. I think opportunities to progress through the EFL as a manager in England, very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. I think if you've got a club with potential, I mean, Chris Wilder has done it recently with Sheffield United, and done brilliant, absolutely outstanding to go through the leagues and up into the Premier League, but they're few and far between. So for me, the more experience I can get of different leagues, different styles, different ways of playing, um, the better. But I think it's down to each individual. But I think as English coaches, managers generally, I don't think we've been great at that over the years. I think generally it's been a comfort of staying at home in England, but that has started to change. Like I say, you can a few examples there of people that have gone abroad and worked in different countries, and I can think of several others. But for me, yes, I'd love to, um, if it was the right place and the right opportunity.
Definitely. And not only now, I think like back in the days also, like few coaches had gone. I think Roy Hodgson had gone to Sweden, and yeah, like he's been quite successful, I guess.
Yeah, you had Sir Bobby Robson, did fantastically well abroad. Terry Venables, more recently Stephen Constantine, obviously worked in India and is
Yeah,
now sporting director and manager at Paphos in Cyprus. So there's others, there's plenty that have done it. I think um, you'd like to see more of that, and at the highest levels as well. I mean, it'd be fantastic to see English coaches working in the Bundesliga, English coaches in La Liga, and around the top leagues in Europe, as Robbie Fowler in India, and there's English coaches working out in America and Australia. So it's great to see, and hopefully there'll be more of it, because I just think that experience and that knowledge makes you more rounded, not only as a coach but as a person as well.
definitely. And like also another factor, maybe for me, I was reading somewhere like the cost of doing your UFA license is way more expensive in UK than maybe in Spain or some other European countries. So I think, do you think that that also helps maybe English coaches to go abroad? Maybe you have the difficulty of maybe learning a new language to survive there, but I mean, even financially it will be better, and of course you will be getting a lot more experience.
Yeah, I think that, coaching courses are expensive here. Yeah, I think the pro license is upwards of £10,000, I think. So yeah, I mean, if you could do it elsewhere, or in that way, it'd be fantastic to do. It's it's something that looking back, if I could have done the pro license in another country, I think that would have been a great thing to do. It'll force you to learn a language. I speak Spanish to a good level, but if you'd have done the pro license there or in Germany, you'd have had to be fluent in the language to be able to get the information and make the benefit of being on the course. So I think adding languages as coaches is another fantastic way of improving. I was conscious of it in the Premier League with the number of foreign players that we had coming in with Spanish-speaking players and French-speaking players. Um, they understand the basics of coaching, but if you want to have a conversation with a player on their level and really understand the emotion of the conversation and get their perspective, if you can do it in their language, so much better than do it in English, which is their second language, or perhaps they're not as fluent. I think we're fortunate in one way, but unfortunate in another, that most people speak English. So, we always get by wherever we go. But I think that's also a disadvantage in terms of it hasn't forced us to learn other languages as it has for a lot of other countries. And that's certainly one thing I think we could do here in terms of education. I think every child in this country should finish high school fluent in another language, whatever language that, whether it's Spanish, French, Mandarin, whatever it may be. If every child started learning at 4 and left school at 16, they would be fluent in a second language, which is always going to be useful in whichever career and life path they choose.
Yeah, I think that is something maybe that is that they should implement. I maybe even if it's not school, maybe from the clubs itself, like who are coming through the academy, because you like probably it limits your options as to where you can go as a coach or even as a player. Nowadays you see a lot of players going to Germany, probably
Yeah,
furthermore would go if probably they would not only to Germany, maybe to other places if they were more comfortable with the language. I think that part I think should be added more.
yeah, without a doubt. I think again another area I think we can improve in this country is the education of players that are within the academy system. I read a fantastic article on Bilbao, their academy, and every player that they keep on to 21, 22 years old has a degree by the time they're. So whether they have a career and go into the first team, great. And the ones that are unfortunate and don't, they've got a degree, and then they can choose to carry on playing or maybe go into another career path. So again, I think it's something we can make a big improvement on. And you can only train so much with players. There's only so many hours in a day that you can work with players. Certainly physically, you can work tactically and technically, video analysis, etc. But there's still enough time in a day for players to be doing an education at 16, 17, 18, 19, even 20 years old, or learning a trade, alongside it in the afternoons. And we all know the percentages of players that actually make it through. So yes, they want to give it everything. Yes, we support that as footballers, but can they also be doing something educationally or learning a trade, so that if they don't quite make that level, there's something else that they can then go into.
Definitely. And in, like, I wanted to touch on this one another topic. I don't know if this is true or this is I I I read it across in Wikipedia, and it's not the most reliable sources, but it is one of the most, I mean, most reliable, although it is not very reliable. So during your UFA Pro license, were you being mentored by Jose Mourinho? Is it true?
Basically, at the start of the pro license, you have to rate yourself on competencies. So you get a framework that you have to mark yourself against, basically. And then the first task we had to do before going on the course was to interview another coach or manager, to be able to look at those on those competencies and find ways um, to mark yourself against, basically, and find ways to improve. So I was fortunate that Jose agreed to do it, and it was fantastic. I went into Cobham, their training ground, one Sunday. It was at Crystal Palace at the time, and it was supposed to be a 15-minute conversation. He gave me an hour and 15 minutes of his time before training, let me watch training that day, and was so open and honest with everything that it was fantastic. It was fantastic to get that experience from someone with the wealth of experience that he had and has now, and the amount of trophies that he's won. But also, interestingly, the pathway that he'd come through, which people probably didn't understand. And coaching youth players, he coached disadvantaged children and children with disabilities. And what really struck me was the human side, how much emphasis he placed on that, and his emotional intelligence was very, very good. So yeah, it's become this label as he mentored me, and but it was like I say, it was a task at the start of the pro license. He was fantastic enough to do it, and was really helpful, and yeah, that was that.
And of course, he was a translator, I guess, at Barcelona. So multiple language does help, like maybe going down the road.
Yeah, he's a fantastic example of that. That yes, he had these coaching skills, and people think he was a translator. He was already coaching. He already had coaching skills. He already had that ability, that drive, fantastic knowledge of the game. But that extra layer of the languages, being able to translate, opened the door for him, and you never know when that opportunity is going to come. So having those languages and be able to do that is very, very important.
Definitely. And like, I want to ask, like, this, like, since you have moved into management right now,
So
so
one second, sorry.
yeah, sure, sure.
Sorry.
So yeah, not a problem at all. Like, since you have moved into like as a on your own as a manager, so would you be open to the idea of moving as going back as an assistant manager, or is that road closed?
No, not at all. I say I'm not pigeonholing myself. I'm not arrogant enough and say, well, I'm a manager and that's it. I'd love to be a head coach. I'd love to be a manager again. But it would need to be, as I say, the right fit for that. Um, I'm equally as open to going back in as an assistant, as a coach. It's about the role and the opportunity that's going to give. And like I say, I want that to be at a good club with good people, um, hopefully where I can develop and learn, but also where I can feel that I can have some impact, and I can help the team. Um, I mean, the big focus, my strength is on the grass and coaching and working with players. And to be honest, at Bristol Rovers, that was probably 10 to 15% of my job. So if I was going to manage again, it'd need to be a role where that percentage was a lot higher. I was dealing with a lot of areas and a lot of things that actually had no impact on the football pitch. So um, whether you had if you gave me the opportunity to manage again, but actually 10% of your focus is going to be that, or you can be an assistant and 80% of your focus is going to be that, then I'd probably take the assistant role in that respect. Because it's, as I say, that's my strength. That's what I feel that I'm good at. That's what I'm best at doing. So it's just a case of each opportunity that comes up, looking at it on its merits, and deciding whether it works, and whether they want me, and obviously whether I want to go there.
Definitely. So we are getting to the end, and I'll ask you like two, three or four questions more. And the first one is like, maybe you get this question a lot, like, what is your playing philosophy like?
I I like to attack. Um, I think it was probably my one biggest frustration from the time at Bristol Rovers is I didn't get it to where I wanted to get it to. There was a lot of reasons for that, but um, I want to have as much of the ball as possible. I want to get it back as quick as possible when we don't have the ball. That's a difficult thing to do and to build. We were along that process. So I think we were making really, really good progress in that respect. But we were building we'd started building from the goalkeeper and working it through the pitch. We needed that final element of the final third and becoming more cutthroat, becoming more of a threat. We were gradually starting to play higher up the pitch defensively. And again, that was progress was being made at that. But yeah, I mean, that's the one thing I've taken away going back in. I want to be very, very true to myself in whatever role I go into next, and be a lot quicker in getting that in place. I think I spent time trying to balance what I wanted with what was at the club in terms of players. And a lot of people had advised me to do that. I think um, with the next opportunity, if I get the opportunity to manage again, it will be now. These are my beliefs. This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing, and we're getting there as quick as we can. As I say, we would have got there at Bristol Rovers. I felt we were really building something and an opportunity to take that club forward. It's a great football club. Fantastic support. They deserve success, and some brilliant staff on the working level. From the ground staff to the coaching staff, analysis staff, absolutely excellent. So, as I say, I'm disappointed not to see that through, but that's football, and you have to move on.
Definitely. And like you spoke of philosophy, and do you like is philosophy something that is overrated? Is it something like high, like a perfect dream job which everyone would want, but it may take time, or it may not reach, you may not reach there, but you need to keep walking with what you have right now? Is it something like that?
Yeah, I think philosophy for me is more around not the playing side. I think you have playing principles that you want and don't change. Um, and formations can be flexible, but principles should be clear. Philosophy for me is more around behaviours and culture and the environment that you want. And again, that's something that we worked really hard on at Bristol Rovers because walking on day, but we have one portal cabin office in a social club car park. We have one pitch that wasn't up to the level needed to coach properly on. Um, we didn't have a canteen, we didn't have a gym. So trying to build a culture and get the behaviours you want and the professionalism you want was very difficult. We worked really hard on. We've developed a new training ground and fantastic pitches, a fantastic gym, and then building offices and building a canteen, building a kit room on site, so that there's no excuses for the players. You provide them with everything, and you constantly push and develop them. So, a philosophy for me is more around those areas. It's about the culture, the vision, um, the behaviours that you want to see every day, and how you want the players to be as a group, as a leadership group, and then that translates onto the pitch. But that takes time. I've had a lot of conversations with managers in football. I've spoken with a lot of people in business and rugby's fascinating because I think they do culture a lot better than what we do in football. But I've asked that question of how long did it take you to get your philosophy, your culture right? And the minimum, the shortest answer I've had is 3 years. The answers have ranged between 3 years and 6 years to get it where they want it. We don't get that time in football. You don't get that time in football now to build things like that. But that took me back, really took me back, that answer, in terms of that's how long it took them to get it where they went. That's that's where I want it. That's now exactly how I want this to look. And like I say, we were really moving down that path at Bristol Rovers, and I think that the players had really bought into it. The staff had really bought into it, and those are the things that people don't see.
Definitely. And you started managing early in in your life, like because of the injury. So you would have read, because you'd had to read and maybe be better than everyone else to maybe be in the backroom stuff. So if did you have any particular managers that you liked following up? Because you said earlier, this in this interview, that you watch particular manager and which you like, instead of just watching maybe 20, 30 games of different pattern, which probably you will not gain much probably than just watching one manager. Did you have anyone like growing up as a manager whom you followed maybe religiously, or maybe not religiously, but like whom you liked watching or whom you liked taking things from?
I think initially Terry Venables was the first one. Um, I had one pre-season with him at Crystal Palace, 17, 18 years old. Um, he was he was completely different to anything that I'd had as a kid. Um, Enthusiastic, bright, intelligent, technical detail with things, um, made you feel good, made you feel positive, absolutely fantastic. So that was probably the biggest impact initially. Was fortunate enough to have some really good mentors along the way. Lenny Lawrence at Crystal Palace was fantastic with me as a young coach in terms of helping me take my badges and passing on his experience. So there was direct experiences like that all the way. I think you learn from everyone that you work with, managers, other coaches. You pick up things daily. In terms of externally, there were always coaches that I looked up to. Um, Going back, even as a kid growing up, I'd always loved the Brazilian teams. You know, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the way they played, the way they expressed themselves. Um, the Ajax teams of Cruyff. And then as a coach, when you're coaching, probably the big one that had an impact was then Guardiola at Barcelona. And it's an obvious one, but when you look how they played, how it was coached, how he did that, he's now done it at Bayern Munich in a different league, in a different way. He's then done it at Manchester City in a league where people said it couldn't be done, but in a different way to the previous two clubs. Fantastic. I love watching his teams play, the detail of how they play and what they do. And then the other one at the moment here, I think, has had a really big impact, and he's probably the one coach that I think does things most different to anyone else is Marcelo Bielsa. And when people say so many coaches have learned from him and visionary and other teams play like him, and I don't see anyone else certainly here play like Leeds. Tactically, the way they set up, how they defend, generally teams are zonal. There's a much greater emphasis on individual defending and man-to-man defending within his system. So I've been fascinated watching Leeds since he's come here and this season in the Premier League. I think if there's a game at the weekend and you want to watch a good game, Leeds, whoever they're playing, it's
Yeah,
going to be because of the way they play, the intensity they play at, the speed they play at, the fact they try and go man-to-man so much. It's going to be a good game of football to watch.
definitely. And yeah, Leeds have been quite entertaining. I mean, like, not for maybe the way Leeds play, maybe it's more nervous for the Leeds fans because they they can lose, but for the neutral, it's amazing to see them play. I mean, like
Yeah,
lot of goals, like either for them or for the opponent, someone is going to score goal. It's going to either they will concede or they are going to score. Either the opponent will take advantage of the spaces or they are going to take advantage. Anyway, for the neutral is amazing.
yeah, I just think they're so pure in what they do, and he's so strong with his beliefs and the way he played. You can see. I mean, I was fortunate a couple of years. I went and watched him for a day at Leeds and watched him train, and how they train and what they do. And historically, I'd watched what he did at Argentina with the national team, and what he did with Chile, and what he did with Bilbao. And you can see his beliefs, and they don't change regardless of who he's playing against. And they played Manchester United and Tottenham before Christmas, and the way he plays suits them because of how they counter attack. I think a lot of managers would change. You go, oh, okay, we need to be kicked. But he doesn't. He's no, we're going to try and win doing it this way, and we might be vulnerable at certain stages because of that. But this is what I believe in, and I'm going to stick to it, and I'm going to do it. And I think that's a fascinating quality to have, and I really admire it.
Definitely. And like we'll wrap it up with one final question. It's almost close to an hour, and I don't want to hold you back for much longer. So, like you started your career in management very early, and if you had to give a piece of advice to probably two sets of people, first, anyone who's going through an injury, what would you give? And secondly, if any young manager who's just starting out, what advice would you give that manager?
In terms of the injury, again, I think context is important. Um, is it an injury that you can recover from? And I think most injuries now you generally can. So in terms of that, the first thing would be just stay positive, work as hard as possible to get back fit and get back playing. And touch wood, I really hope that anyone in that situation does and can make the most of their playing career. Um, in terms of young coaches or managers starting out, I think the biggest thing I'll tell you, it depends what you want to achieve, um, what level you want to work at, what you want to do as a coach. You want to work with young players, and and develop. Do you want to work at senior level and get into the winning side of the business? I think it depends on the context again. Whatever level you want to work at and where you decide you want to go, sacrifice is key. You want to make the most of yourself, make the most of your potential. Um, Again, that's probably the thing people don't see behind the scenes. I think looking back on my coaching, my career today, you sacrifice an enormous amount, um, socially, family life, um, a lot of other areas in your life suffer as a consequence of pursuing what you want to do. But I don't regret that. I wouldn't change anything about that because it's who I am. It's what I wanted to do, and I've taken this break as a little opportunity to almost reframe where I am. Disappointment to leave Bristol Rovers, but I took it back to right. This is how long I've been coaching now. In a professional setting, 16 years. This is what I've achieved in that time now. Starting out at Crystal Palace at 24 years of age with the under 11s, would I have said 16 years later, this is what I'd have achieved? Would I be happy with that? And the answer would have been yes. Yeah, I would have been happy with that. So, now I've reframed it right. Next 16 years, what are the targets? What do I want to achieve? And I've had a fantastic journey. My other bit of advice would be just to enjoy it. If you enjoy coaching, you love working with players, then do it. I loved from day one of doing it. I'm working with players of 10 years of age, all the way through to coaching and managing senior players. I love every part of the job in that respect. So yeah, you're gonna have to make sacrifices, but if you enjoy it, then do it if it's what you love.
Definitely. And you like on that note, Ben, thank you so much for talking to me, and I wish you all the best for your next job, wherever it is, and hope you can bounce back soon and probably take charge and probably flourish. Maybe you can be like Chris Wilder's Sheffield and go up all the way to Premier League. Hope to see you there, and and hope to talk to you again soon. Until then, take care, stay safe. Bye. Thank you so much once again, Ben.